On Wednesday, June 29th, 2016, now critically acclaimed, slightly less independent, but still very Danish, game developer Playdead released the anticipated spiritual successor to their 2010 debut hit LIMBO with the mind-bending, glass-breaking, and monster-mashing puzzle platformer Inside to PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Mac OS, and iOS. On Wednesday, June 29th, 2016, I had just wrapped up my junior year of high school, probably shifting my mental state from one random innocuous task to another, trying so desperately to get people to take me seriously as I organized and planned out my perfect Magic the Gathering deck, thinking to myself that if I kept all my dreams at arm's length, then I'll actually never have to build up the courage to follow them. I'm gonna tap 3 blue mana to deal 5 emotional damage to myself. Thank you. Hello there, Internet. How are you? Welcome to a channel where I am quitting video games. But because I love the games I've played so much, I will be writing an essay and making a video for each game that I own, and in doing so, say goodbye to each of them with the world. Today, we're gonna be saying goodbye to the indie hit sci-fi puzzle platformer Inside. But you may have noticed a, let's call it, discrepancy on the title, thumbnail, premise, and overall wherewithal of this video, and that is the fact that I have included Katsuhiro Otomo's masterwork sci-fi grand epic, AKIRA. This is not an accident. Okay. So this video was originally going to just be about Playdead's Inside, and I would casually mention AKIRA from time to time to foreshadow and then eventually discuss the world-renowned anime work of Japanese art in a bonus essay near the end, like I do for most other videos on this channel. But, dear viewer, I have a small confession to make. I'm a weeb. それは本当です。俺はオタクです。ごめんなさい。I know. You look like a Tesla coil, you're so shocked. If the Lollipop Chainsaw video didn't drop enough hints, I love me some anime. Like, a lot. Well, really and honestly, I just love me international media in general. International being outside the US because I happen to be in America. So, if really we think about it, from a worldly perspective, perhaps I just love media in general, but specifically and for the purposes of this video, I love Japanese media quite a lot. But specifically and for the purposes of simplicity and argument, I love anime quite a lot. And AKIRA is the anime. Also, I'm gonna be calling it by the English phonetic AKIRA, not the more accurate Japanese phonetic AKIRA. Because, firstly, I'm American, and secondly, I try my best every single day to not sound like Jerry in that one episode of Rick and Morty.
Oh, real nice, Rick. Turning our son into an Akira?
But, regardless of my pandering projection onto fictional cartoon characters, as I was visualizing and planning the AKIRA bonus essay for this here Inside essay, I slowly started to realize that if I continued writing it the way that I was, this innocuous little bonus essay would soon be as big, if not bigger, than the main essay it was supposed to be a side piece of, and that didn't really sit quite well with me. But it also didn't sit quite well with me to not include it at all. So, like a potato in water, I stewed. I thought about it, and I hesitated, perhaps a little bit too long, until suddenly a thought entered its way into my CRT wired head. What if I made a connected essay? What if I made an essay explaining my love and connection for both Inside and AKIRA? An essay juxtaposing and appreciating both this Danish indie game and this Japanese multimedia conglomerate. An essay that in and of itself was a meeting, a marrying, if you will, of two worlds so different but also so similar. And that's what I did, and that's what this is. This here video is a dual essay. A dual essay of the fates, an essayist double feature, a nerd-tastic special presentation just for your viewing pleasure. This video will go over all my thoughts on both Playdead's Inside and Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira. First, by breaking down their functional parts individually, and then comparing, contrasting, and compiling their ideas fundamentally, until we bring them together in a celebration of what they both are as themselves and what they are together. You, audience, if you so wanted to, could watch this video as simply just an Inside essay, or simply just an Akira essay, but I think that would be doing a disservice both to you as a viewer and to these two pieces of art. Because these two pieces of art harmonize so well together, and I really hope to illustrate that moving forward. However, regardless of illustration, I will only be saying goodbye to one of them. Since Akira doesn't fall under the category of video game, I am not obligated to bid it farewell, so I will simply be using Akira's accoutrement to highlight what makes Inside so great, and what also makes it so difficult to say goodbye to. On the onset, these two pieces of media might seem very different, but if we start diving below their surfaces, we see that they are eerily similar and more like each other than we could have ever thought. Both of these works are about being oppressed to the point of mutation. Not only creating a destructive force, but becoming a destructive force. Becoming a monster to fight a monster. These works are about breaking the innocent to fight the hurt, but realizing that pain is universal. And choice is the antithesis to innocence. These works come with baggage. They are messy in both their real-life aftermath and their fictional aftermath. Akira is a journey that leaves you with a sliver of hope, but teaches you that a sliver is all you need. Inside is a game that brings you in hoping, but leaves you with beautiful destruction. But regardless of the ending, both of these specimens leave us with the question, who said that becoming a monster doesn't have to be so much bloody fun? So, as mentioned a couple of minutes ago, before the nucleus of this essay split into half, Inside is the newest, and as of recording this script, latest release from Danish game development company Playdead. And I kind of sort of already explained Playdead's history and my love for Dino Patty's face in the Limbo video, so if you need context, that's where it'll be. Also, don't worry, you don't have to watch the Limbo video to understand this video, because while these games do have the same parents, they aren't mutually exclusive to one another. But, I mean, the hotel sign is referenced in Inside. There's the hotel sign. There's also a Limboy cameo. You can barely see him in the game of Inside, and he's way more visible if you break the game and go outside the camera bounds. Okay. Maybe these two games are a little bit similar. But being made by the same people, Limbo and Inside have a fairly similar backstory in terms of development. The only real difference being is that Inside got the better end of the finance stick because Limbo was such a critical and commercial success that our overtly handsome buddies at Playdead were given way more money, time, and resources to outdo themselves. And oh boy, did they outdo themselves. Inside is a bigger game in every way when compared to Limbo. That means more puzzles, more atmosphere, more machines, and, of course, so much more child death. And dude, if you thought losing your head to a bear trap was too extreme, get ready for this game. Inside also has a lot more to say than Limbo did. And I think that it speaks in a much smoother, sweeter way than Limbo does. They were both made by the same people, but you can definitely tell that whenever Limbo jogged, Inside ran. Like, if I were to picture the two games arguing as siblings, it would go something exactly like this.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
The first time I ever saw anything about Inside was actually in August of the year 2016, almost a whole 2 months after this game came out. But in order to explain this connection, I I first have to explain another. By this time in my life, I had become very much acquainted with these little-known Let's Players. You may have heard of them, called the Gramp Cramps. Wait, no. The Grave Stumps. No, that's not right. The Game Grumps! Oh, God, we're like less than 10 minutes into this essay, and I'm already mentioning the Game Grumps. Strap in, folks. This is going to be a wild ride.
How do your parents describe what you do to their friends?
I have no earthly idea.
By August of the year 2016, I had grown very accustomed to watching a Game Grumps playthrough from time to time, because ever since my beautiful, spectacular, devilishly handsome, certified hood classic friend Matthew introduced me to the band Starbomb and subsequently the band Ninja Sex Party, I was caught hook, line, and sinker. I mean, I was neck deep into my teenage years by 2016, and if I could hear two dudes belt fantastic ballads about ridiculous scenarios in video games, then I'm going to choose that over my homework any day of the week. That wasn't an advocation, by the way. Hey, listen, if you're watching this and not doing your homework,
stop. Do your homework. Don't be me. Do you think I want a TV for a head, Samantha?
So, I was scrolling through YouTube and I came across the finale of a playthrough the Game Grumps were playing through, and the game they were finalizing happened to be the exact same game I am introducing right now. That game, of course, was Inside. Having not ever seen or heard of Inside before, I decided to put the video on in the background, probably while I slaved away trying to build the perfect win con for my black-blue control deck. As their finale continued, my attention was drawn, dare I say, violently to the screen. About a quarter of the way through the video, they had just reached the moment in the game that I would argue has made this game famous, or perhaps infamous, in indie game circles. They had reached the final act of this game, and they were shook. As these two grown men spat expletives in shock at what was unfolding, I couldn't help but share in that equal amazement. Both the Grumps and I were experiencing what I can only call pure astonishment at what Playdead had done with this seemingly harmless video game. I'm of course, referencing the absurdly grotesque and shockingly satisfying ending to Inside. If you don't know what happens at the end of Inside, then I recommend you go play it really quick before continuing on through this video, because I unsarcastically think that it's one of my favorite video game endings ever. It's definitely one of those things that is best experienced without knowing anything about it beforehand, and I really don't want to be the guy to ruin it for you. So, if you haven't seen it, and if you don't want it spoiled, stop this video and play the game right now. Samantha, listen to me. Play the game. I promise you will not be disappointed. I'll be right here when you get back. Okay, are you back? Even if you do want it spoiled, then don't worry, because I'm going to be talking about this very moment very, very in-depth later on, so we can all be looking forward to that. My personal history with Inside is also fairly notable. I remember watching the ending with the Game Grumps 3 years prior and wanting to shock all of my roommates, so I called them into the living room and watched their faces twist in horror as they saw this moment unfold. Sadly, I wouldn't touch this game again until I pulled its name, alongside its predecessor's name, out of a bright orange Peruvian beanie, also known as a chuyo, that my aunt had gotten me for my birthday 14 years ago. And through all the time I have spent with this game, I can tell you that Inside is much, much more than its ending. And I think that what it doesn't say in its ambiguity, it screams in its subtlety. Because much like Limbo, Inside gives us little to no answers as to what it all means, but it is definitely not subtle in what it's about. Inside is about monsters. And not just the literal ones, or I guess the fictional ones. I'm not talking about kaiju here, okay? I'm talking about what the game makers deem to be monstrous. Acts put upon by others to others. And the game asks us, how do we combat those acts? But sadly, its answer isn't surprising. If you watched the first video, then you know that this duo of games stands right next to the emoest emo boy quote there is by the emoest emo boy philosopher there is. Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you. As said in the Limbo video, that game represents the second half of this quote. This game represents the first half of this quote. Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. Inside is a game that lets us become what we fight. And it doesn't just stand on the shoulders of giants, it tears them down and makes those giants look at the scale with which they fell. Inside is a game that has been wondered about and so loved that I think it's almost criminal to not talk about it in the same breath as other masterworks of its kind. So let's get monstrous in our approach and let's dive deep into Inside. Okay, alright, okay, so the story, right? Honestly, when I turned on my Xbox One and chose to delve into the dark depths of this devious game, the story was, in a very strange way, simultaneously both at the front of my mind and at the very back of my mind. Most interestingly, it held these spots for the exact same reason. Even before I had ever considered buying the Playdead bundle and with it inside, I had already seen the ending. So, from the very moment I opened up the game, I was just waiting incessantly for something I knew would eventually happen to, well, happen. This meant that I wasn't exactly paying attention to the tasks, trials, or tribulations the protagonist was going through. I was just anticipating an outcome that felt inevitable. What I'm trying to say is that I was mostly ignoring all of the subtleties and story elements this child was going through. Also, the official name for the protagonist in this game is the protagonist, Christopher Nolan, Eat Your Heart Out. And sadly, I couldn't conjure up a clever play on words style title for this nameless child like I did for the nameless boy in Limbo. And honestly, I think that even if I tried to give the protagonist their own name, I definitely couldn't top Limboy. So we must do what the hobos do and take what we have and move on. This might sound impossible, but our main protag in Inside is actually more ambiguous than Limboy was, because we can't even assume the protagonist's intentions because we know infinitely less about him, and that's mostly because 0 is almost infinitely less than 1. In Limbo, we could discern Limboy's intentions by what we were told in that infamously optional 9-word promotional sentence found on this game's Steam page. And from that, we know that this child is searching a place called Limbo for his sister, or I guess more specifically his sister's fate. Now, if we look at Inside's Steam page, we're greeted with this monstrosity. Look at this. This thing is the frickin' War and Peace of video game descriptions when compared to Limbo. It reads, and I quote, "Hunted and alone, a boy finds himself drawn into the center of a dark project. Inside is a dark, narrative-driven platformer combining intense action with challenging puzzles. It has been critically acclaimed for its moody art style, ambient soundtrack, and unsettling atmosphere." My God. When we read this frickin' novella, there's really only one sentence that seems to hint to us what this quote-unquote narrative-driven platformer could be about, and that's the first sentence. Hunted and alone, a boy finds himself drawn into the center of a dark project. And even those 15 words actually give us a lot less to go off of than Limbo's 9. Because we don't know this boy's motivations. However, to Inside's credit, this description actually gives us the implication of an antagonist within the first word. I know I've been kind of dogging on this description for the last few minutes, but I really love the questions that this opening sentence leaves us to ask. Who's hunting this boy? What is the Dark Project exactly? Why does it have a center? I bring all of this up to actually counteract a point that I have been leading you to assume, but that may have already kind of been obvious. Inside actually has a pretty interesting and cool story. Dun dun dun! I know, right? While the comparison to its predecessor is inevitable, what this game has over the previous, besides scope, budget, color, multiple locations, a much stronger understanding of what it means to be a linear game, and also the whole third dimension, is a coherent plot. Well, I use the word coherent lightly, but you get the idea. There isn't that much choice in terms of a narrative path, except for something that we will get into shortly, but the main play of the game is solving the puzzles. Much like Limbo, the only way forward is to get over certain obstacles or past certain enemies. There's still no dialogue besides the occasional belated gasp or grunt, but we can still follow the action relatively well. We just have to pay attention. Every question we have can sort of kind of be answered by looking into one place: the background of the game and the background of the game's development. Inside utilizes many clever techniques to have the player focused on the foreground for gameplay and the background for story. The game designers and the storytellers are working as one here, and they worked really hard to make this visual marriage of depth seamless, because it's never distracting and always rewarding to be working on a puzzle while you're watching something intriguing and interesting just behind you. The game embeds this implementation early on in the story, where we hear and see people moving just beyond our main boy, and the experience only grows from there. I'll talk about this specific thing much more in the gameplay section, but for right now, all you need to know is that the story is more in the environment than in the actions of the player. The story we see unfold before us, or I guess behind us, is questionable and interpretive, and we don't really seem to be impacted by the story or impactful to the story up until the very last hour of the game. It's like the things we're seeing happen are inevitable, but whether we like it or not, it's still happening. Almost out of our control, like we're being drawn into something, led into something big. But before we start, I'd actually like to say that I truly, genuinely, honestly believe that this story is best experienced without knowing anything about it beforehand. So, again, one more time, if you haven't played this game and think that you might want to, please go do that. Please go do that so that I don't have a hernia. I promise you will be rewarded for your patience. Anyway, on to the story. Exterior, woods, day. Our story begins in a yellow wood, but we're not getting Robert Frosty in here because there is no road diverging. We hear a rustling, and suddenly, the tree we were looking at gives birth to our protagonist, named the protagonist. We see that our main boy is running from masked men who are seemingly loading up people into trucks and subsequently trying to abduct our main boy as well. For what and why, we don't exactly know, but our main confidant evades their vans, their flashlights, and their dogs until he arrives at a farm. This farm, and the surrounding roads, have either been abandoned by its owners, or they just have very desolate decorating tastes. We run through a cornfield, throw chickens at a box, and Assassin's Creed ourselves onto a pile of dead pigs. As we run to the next area, we get interrupted by a pig who really wants to get inside the next building, so we politely oblige. After ripping something out of the pig's rear end, quick fun fact, for the first 4 times I played this game, I seriously thought that this was us violently ripping off the pig's tail, but now I know that that is not the case. More on that later. We then discover a helmet dangling from the ceiling that allows us to control nearby lifeless bodies and turn them into unlifeless bodies. or as my grandmother called them, bodies. We use said bodies to help us get out of the barn and move to the next area, where we can see a long line of lifeless people walking into something. After some warehouse shenanigans involving a safe and a hole in the ground, we find ourselves in a disheveled city where that long line of lifeless people is shown to be a lot longer and a lot more lifeless than we could have imagined. We find an elevator that needs power, so we flip a switch, but in doing so, we activate a giant toy robot that, ironically, is not here to play. I don't know if this was like intentional, but that robot definitely looks like Rob. You know, the toy that Nintendo invented to play the NES with you? Anyway. After getting past the Rob and down the elevator, we Looney Tunes our way into a line of lifeless bodies, having to perform a series of tasks to prove to the onlookers that we are indeed also lifeless. Sadly, but predictably, our cover gets blown and we run until we drop into a section of water. After stealing a page from The Last of Us and then playing hopscotch with a fence and some dogs, we hijack a submarine and venture into a ruined underwater compound. After discovering what this submarine and the Kool-Aid Man have in common,
Oh yeah!
we see a childlike figure swimming in the water. The wiki, again, calls this thing, or things, long-haired creatures. Even though it seems improbable, I personally like to believe that there aren't multiple of these creatures and that there's only just one, because I think that just makes more sense to me thematically, but that's neither here nor there. Also, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call this thing the Siren from here on out, just because that's what a lot of other people call it, and I think that name is way cooler than long-haired creature. But anyway, we quickly learn that the Siren does not want to be friends, so we have to cleverly avoid it and move on our way until we beach our vessel and arrive at a massive facility. We quickly enter this facility and get to work collecting lifeless bodies for a counter, and after getting a mind control helmet of our own and assembling a small army... Man, dude, look at the squad go, dude! It's just us and the boys! Just some good old boys! Anyway, we open the accompanying door and find ourselves trapped in what seems to be the nuke testing part of this facility. We narrowly escape atomic blasts with what looks to be sheet metal and break a perfectly good elevator before running into the Siren again, and our long-haired fiend forces us to play a game of water cat and water mouse until we trust a chain rope a little bit too much and fall into the Siren's clutches, only for her to drag us deep underwater and attach a cord to our chest, giving us the power of fish, apparently. With our newfound underwater breathing skills, we make it through the facility until we find that gravity also seems to be questionable here, so we have to deal with that now. Also, we no longer need the helmet to control the drones around us, so we kind of just got the whole squad on standby whenever, wherever we're ready, because the boys are back in town, the boys are back in town. We use our friends to get us to a new part of the facility where there are offices, but further in the background there are cubes that look like they're testing and measuring various things and people. We continue on until we reach a giant vat that we finagle ourselves into, and upon doing so, we lose all of our clothes and discover... Oh boy, welcome to the beginning of the end. This ungodly beauty is called the Huddle, and oh sweet Vishnu, I love the insanity that is this game. We start unplugging the various and quite familiar looking cords attached to the huddle until the being consumes us and we as the player become the huddle. Oh my god, everything in my life up to this point was so worth it just for this moment in this game. We escape our captivity and in a glorious, vicious, powerful show of force, we rampage our way through this facility. We use our hulking body to break, push, pull, and squash our way to a suspected freedom until we are captured. But not for long, because we cannot be contained. So we escape yet again and smash through a wall and fall gloriously through a mountainside. Only to land in a patch of sunlight, just barely missing the ocean's edge. Roll credits. And that's the end of this story. If you didn't collect all the collectibles, in accordance to Limbo, Inside also has a series of interactive collectibles that act as their own mini puzzles for you to solve in the form of these miniature ball things. Miniature ball things. Add that to the list of weirdly worded stuff I wish I didn't say in a public video. If you happen to find all of the MBTs and then go up instead of down at the game's last ladder, then you find a giant ball thing. And if you open the hatch of said giant ball thing and just happen to know to press the action button to pull an unseen lever, then good on you. You're not me and had to watch like 3 guides to do this. Now, once you have done that, you then have to exit the game and open a save by the cornfield, and then find this completely innocuous spot, open an unseen hatch, and then venture down said hatch to find a secret room. You actually would have found this room earlier because there's an MBT down here, but you go to the right instead of the left, enter this code that you just happen to know because you're a genius, I guess. And after that, you'll travel down a long hallway to see a collection of computers connected to a mind control helmet, and then you do the only thing that seems plausible in this situation, which is reenact the "Don't hug me, I'm scared" ending, and pull the plug on this whole shebang. And once you do, you slump over just like all the other lifeless bodies found in the game, and Playdead's Inside quickly fades into darkness. No credits. No end screen. Just darkness. The end. That's it, dude. That's what you get. But that's also the alternate ending to this game, or maybe the quote-unquote real ending. It's very unconfirmed. It's unconfirmed whether this ending is more canon than the regular ending, but both are just ambiguous as well. Everything else in this incredibly strange and beautiful game. Now, Inside, while having a more fleshed out, pun intended, and more coherent plot than Limbo, that doesn't necessarily mean that we, know what the heck is going on. You can talk about what literally happens in the game, as I've just done, and you can talk about the who, the how, and the where fairly well, but the one question that Playdead cleverly and annoyingly leaves out of this story is the why. Why are these masked people chasing us? Why are we trying to get into this facility? Why are these people studying and experimenting on the things that they are? None of these questions are answered clearly. Actually, I think that the game is better off for not answering these questions because it adds a beautiful layer of mystery to this world. Without giving us the why, Playdead injects their ever so genius atmosphere into this world. And also, not telling us why lets us be even more shocked and bewildered when the huddle shows up. Oh my god, I absolutely love this ending because it comes out of nowhere. Almost. From the very first time we realize that this world is populated by something other than us, we are thrown into anticipation. As soon as we leave the entrance section in the forest and we see the big truck drive away, we are told to constantly look behind us, literally and metaphorically. And the moments of us watching our back keep adding up and getting more and more tense. Like the moment when the siren shows up for the second time is a beautiful moment to illustrate this point. Because we see her floating, lifeless, just beyond some glass. And then as we work our way up through the puzzles, we fall through a gate and boom, there she is. We gingerly swim past her because We know in the back of our minds that she might not be dead. And then, oh God, oh my 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 God. That moment with the siren isn't the only moment that makes this game delightfully macabre. I mean, all our deaths are brutal and not quick. We watch the protagonist perish in a very shocking and coarse manner very frequently. Everything in this world screams oppression, from the silence of the city to the mercilessness of the men trying to grab us, to even the color palette being as bright as 1984.
Imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
All of this darkness just keeps building as we get deeper and deeper into this game, and we can feel something about to happen. It's like when you anticipate a jump scare in a horror movie. You're just sitting on edge knowing that something's about to jump out at you. And adding to that, the protagonist is a child, a boy. So the description says, everything we are fighting is vastly bigger and or more powerful than us. We are constantly overshadowed by the things we run from and the things we avoid. A lot of the puzzles we face are just us trying to sneak past or elude some being or unseen force that is trying to capture or kill us. And then, all of a sudden, we are the thing to be feared. We have the power, and we use it to get out of the mess we have put ourselves in. And what a mess we make on the way out. My favorite moment in the huddle sequence is when we run through the interworkings of the office and we trip off ledges and fall through floors and squish what is presumably the CEO of this dark facility. I love this whole sequence because the moment the huddle shows up is such a moment of beauty. Because it puts something in our hands that we forgot we didn't have. Control. Or a sense of it. Being the size and having the shape that we do, we move awkwardly. We move like how I imagine a building drawn by Dr. Seuss would move in the real world. Like there's no way that this is structurally sound. But we hold this incredible power that feels so foreign once it's given to us. Like we can actually see what it feels like to be the thing people are afraid of, and then that power leaves us as soon as it was given to us. And even through all of this feeling, we still don't have any sense of what's actually going on around us. Which brings me back to the Limbo video. All of the way back in time, almost forgotten by modern man, I described that one of the theories trying to explain Limbo's story is that Limbo and Inside are connected, and not just by game developer, but by world. The theory connecting them proposes that all of Limbo takes place in one of the many chambers seen throughout Inside, and we as Limboy are just one of the experiments being observed and tested. Do you remember about 2,033 words ago when I said that I'd talk about the thing that the Inside protagonist pulled off of that pig's butt? Well, that strange worm seems to act very similarly to the brain parasites that infect and torment Limboy throughout Limbo. Just like in Limbo, these parasites seem to attach themselves to hosts and then control them. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that the first time we see these parasites is also the first time we see and use the control helmets. Half-baked theory incoming, but maybe the scientists use these parasites to make the mind control technology, harnessing the bug's ability to take over minds and nearby people, turning them into drones, and then they use this ability to control people on a mass scale and use them as mindless working slaves for the upper class of this mythical, fictional, totalitarian Kafka-esque Dostoevsky nightmare. But that's not all. They don't want to just control minds. They want to control bombs, water, and gravity. But their big one, their big giant monster, the Huddle, the conglomeration of all their telepathic power efforts, rebels, and in its weakened state takes control of a child to free itself. But the Huddle, while powerful, can't survive outside the facility. So, the scientists try to capture it before it leaves and dies. But despite them trying to guide it to a trap, this is why some scientists help us near the end, we get free, and we use the last of our strength to tumble down a hill and die on a beach. But we die with something that we have never had. We die with freedom. However, if we rebel, not we as in the Huddle, we as in the player. If we as the player rebel and we use the boy to decide that we don't want any of this anymore, we don't want to be the main source of the brain control, we want to end this whole shebang. So we find all of the beacons that this facility has hidden to power their exploits, and we take them all out one by one until finally we literally pull the plug on oppression, mind control, and the very manifestation of the man, but in doing so, we take ourselves out as well. Perhaps we take everyone out, ending not only oppression, but everything. No more slavery, no more violence, no more escape, but no more hope. All of this leaving us with the question, is the lack of sadness worth the lack of everything? We'll never know, because we won't wake up. Okay. I'm gonna stop myself there, because all of that is just a theory. A half-baked theory. Inside is a masterclass in show don't tell storytelling, because we are only being shown. We are only seeing what this game shows us, and we can infer and gather so much from that perspective. And really, I have no gripes with this story. And I think a main part of that is because this story works so well with the excellent As previously mentioned, the first time I played this game, I had already known where the story was going to take me. Now, having both played all of Playdead's duology, I realized that these games absolutely live and die by their gameplay. Both of them being side-scrolling puzzle platformers, a genre of game as old as, well, gaming itself. You see, in the Limbo video, I hypothesized that all games are puzzle games to some degree, and if I may, dear audience, let me expand on this point. I believe that art, all art, whether thy be a movie, painting, video game, or anything that expands creative effort, is an illusion, not a lie. Ooh, introspection in the gameplay section, I do declare. I think way too many of you liked seeing me in a dress a second ago, so I think you all need to calm down. I believe that art is an illusion, not a lie. And by that, I mean that I think that art alludes to the world around us using some level of the fantastic, and it uses this to show us something that may be difficult to see. Put a pin in that thought, because we're gonna come back to it later. Much later, but still later. Inside is a 2D side-scrolling, rock-and-rolling, puzzle platforming, monster mashing, city smashing of a game. Through and through. And like I mentioned before, the first time I played Inside was on a medium-sized couch that I inhabited in a small apartment in the large city of Los Angeles. The second time I played this game was actually a day before I finished the No Point in Dying achievement in Limbo. And don't worry if you don't remember the stress and pain that I went through to finish Limbo, because I'll remember it for the both of us. But the day I spent playing Inside, and yes, this game literally only took me one day to 100%, was a delightful time. It was so delightful because the anticipation I had for the ending in my first playthrough robbed me of all the little moments that made my second playthrough sing. Inside may be a small indie game that you can finish in under 3 hours, but don't let that fool you. This game is expansive. Everything is tripled from the last game. The graphics are sharper and in a whole other dimension. The environments are more immersive and detailed. The puzzles are more complex, and the tendons that hold all of this together is the amazing atmosphere and tone with the spectacular sound design. The gameplay of Inside is buttery smooth. Any modicum of movement from our main character feels so great to execute because of both the precise programming and the detailed animation of every single swim, fall, tumble, crash, etc., etc. The meticulous detail that Playdead imbued within this game is very evident from the moment we emerge from our forest hideaway. The sound of the forest, the slight rustle of the trees and their movement in the wind, and then when we press any button, we see this child land awkwardly on the stone ground, haphazardly moving leaves from under him in the slightest but most notable of ways. It feels so lifelike, and it seamlessly moves us into this world. The game also has a dastardly ambient and eerie soundtrack that is designed to just keep you on a razor's edge of discovery and terror. Some tracks sound like literally just sounds emanating from the background until at select moments they explode with what I can only describe as serendipity. Isn't that just awesome? Doesn't that just blow you away? Ugh, poor taste. Speaking of things that happen in the background, much like how the story of our humble protagonist raging against the mad facility is happening in the background, our experience as the player is happening in the foreground, and everything we need to finish the game is right in front of us. I alluded to this in the story section, but let me illustrate it better here. You see, we can think of this game's layout as two planes with only one rule. We'll call this plane A and this plane B. Plane A is where all the business happens. This is where we control the protagonist and solve puzzles. Plane B is where we see the world unfold around us and where the world around us can try to hurt/hunt us. And the only rule that seems to dictate these planes is that plane B elements can come into plane A elements, but not vice versa. That person over there can kill us from over there, but we can't go over there to hide. This is proven to us by everything from dogs to shockwaves throughout the story. And the only thing we have to help us overcome the game is the game itself. Much like Limbo, Inside's puzzles are complex but not that intricate. These words are synonyms, and that sentence seems confusing. Let me explain. A Rubik's Cube is intricate. There's a lot of moving parts and colors, and you have to move and execute things just right in order to save it. Juggling is complicated. Your goal, simply, relatively, is you gotta keep these balls in the air, and you gotta move them in a circular motion. Simple idea, not very easy to execute. Believe me, Inside has its intricate puzzles, but the vast majority are puzzles that have simple ideas at their core, that aren't exactly easily executed, especially your first go-round. Inside has a lot more moments where you have to look at the problem and realize that the solution is right in front of your face. Let me give you an example. Really, the first time I'd say that the game truly puzzles us is right here. This is a moment right after we get past the first wave of guards. You see, in those moments, it probably won't take a reasonable person very long to find out that you're supposed to wait for the guards to pass and sneak by them. But right here, this little indentation in the ground is our first pickle. How do we get there? Well, since we all know that this section of the video is about numbers and how to bypass said numbers, it should be a breeze. The answer to almost every puzzle in Inside is to use the environment. If we take a few steps back, we see a box that was seemingly innocuous, but after interacting with it, we realize that we can slide it to where we need to go. Oh, the world is more interactable than we once thought. Noted. Now, flash forward to here. We have to get to this building. However, there is a trio of planks we have to tear from the foundation, and we have a trio of dogs that want to tear us limb from bow. And all we have to work in our favor is a chain link fence. We learn very quickly that when we climb the fence, it gives us a window of about 10 seconds before the dogs get us, and each plank of wood takes about 4 seconds to pull off. This math is not a good sign. This means that we need 12 seconds to get all of the planks off, and before you ask, no, once the dogs start running, they will switch directions just as fast as they started running, which means the only way to maximize our guaranteed success is to reset the clock. But how do we do that? Thank you for asking. Questions are important. The only way you'll get a full 10 seconds out of the dogs chasing you is if the dogs completely run to the other side of the fence, but you learn through trial and error that the only way to do this is to plant your little baby feet on the other side of the fence, luring the dogs over to the opposite side, giving you the opportunity to bounce over the fence, resetting your 10 seconds, then rinse, wash, and repeat until you got all 3 planks off, and then much like a hacker in a 90s movie, you're in. Now, why did I over-explain this probably simple puzzle of the game? Well, for a few reasons. Firstly, I want to illustrate that this game's environment is part of the construction. The environment is as a part of everything else as, well, everything else. It feels almost criminal to separate the sections of this game like this, because the story and the gameplay and everything else feels so smooth and integrated in so well. It's all so easy to get lost in. Another reason is that I'd rather super overanalyze a simpler puzzle than go through all the intricacies of a more complicated puzzle, because I want you to feel the thrill of figuring them out for yourself. But just so that I can say I did, and just so that you can't say I didn't, here is a quick list of all the things that you can and will die from inside. We got people, dogs, called Holves for some reason. Holves. I think it's a mixture of hounds and wolves, but that's neither here nor there. Water, heights, this one brain parasited pig, the giant Rob robot with a taser, this camera with a taser, these lights with a taser, the siren, an atomic shockwave, and turbine blades. And all of them have puzzles that we need to solve to get around them, or else we get mutilated. But that isn't a negative, because this game straight bypasses joy and gives you a full-on feeling of survival when a puzzle is finally figured out. And that's because the controls and the timing are so beautifully tight that it's hard to not hold your breath whenever you actually pull off one of this game's many nail-biting moments. And a major factor contributing to this is the game's controls. This game feels so very special to control. The protagonist feels both incredibly smooth and incredibly weighty at the same time. Every single area has a gravity to it. Not only a physical gravity, but a legit weight to either the visuals, the animation, the scenarios, or the terribly beautiful mix of all three. And the attention to detail doesn't change when we interact with all the tools in the game, because inside has a lot of contraptions, like the chicken thrower, or one of the many crank systems in the game. But the main tool we'll be using when we play inside are these jump box things. I haven't been having a lot of luck with wikis recently, because I tried looking for these on the Inside wiki, these vital and crucial parts of the game, and they are mentioned one place on the wiki, and they are called Steam boxes, which, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty cool name, and I guess I'll call them that. But the Steam boxes are a simple yet interesting contraption. A Steam box can be categorized as a cube with a lever on top and a contraption in the middle. And whenever the lever is pulled, a 4-second time starts. And after that time is elapsed, the contraption causes the cube to propel in the air for exactly 2 seconds. We use these many times in many different ways. However, I would say that the most interesting tool we use in the game is the submarine. I say it's the most interesting because the submarine not only has its own full section of the game, but it has its own weighty timed thrust action. No, I'm not saying it like that. Because the submarine has its own weighty timed pump action. Nope, that's worse. Because the submarine has its own weighty timed push system that hurls you forward in any direction if you hold the action button long enough. I hope that sounds better. There's a decent chunk of this game where you're required to use the submarine as your main system of traversal, and the sub moves like what are those astronaut air hose chair jetpacks called? You know, the ones in like movies like Gravity and The Martian, like they're sitting down and they're like zooming through space and like little air hoses go like spew 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 spew. Wait, hold on. It's called the Manned Maneuvering Unit. This is an underwhelming name, NASA. Like come on. You couldn't call it the Throne Drone or the Air Chair? You went with the Manned Maneuvering Unit? Come on. You know, if you didn't open up a world of beauty to the modern science space view on a mass scale and put human beings on the closest celestial rock body, then maybe I couldn't forgive you. What are we talking about? The submarine moves like a NASA Throne Drone, patent pending, making the occupant move through water with precise adjustments rather than just regular forward motion, and then using previously mentioned Freudian charge move to break through any necessary debris or to even perform dolphin jumps out of the water. Interestingly, the sub is not the only thing we pilot throughout the game, because sprinkled throughout the game are mind control helmets that let us be able to take over nearby drones, and for a short time, our movement becomes theirs. But this should also be noted as another point of praise to the developers, because even when controlling the drones, we feel slightly different. The drones aren't children, so they move slower but stronger, and we have to use the drones to move, lift, and push things our small little child body cannot. But the grand achievement in movement is fully emphasized and heightened when we become the huddle. Oh boy, I really like being the huddle. The huddle is meaty to control. The huddle is a massive force of fleshy power and awkward precision, just like your mom. The team at Playdead really pulled off this hyper-specific feeling of controlling a blob of body parts, and I can't imagine that it would feel any different. It's a fluidly jello feeling of power, because the huddle is omnidirectional. There is no up or down. You can grab and push and run with any one of these many appendages. The huddle feels heavy, but it also feels agile and quick. It also groans a lot, meaning that somewhere in this monstrosity is vocal cords, which is like, it's a weird thought. The huddle feels like it is barely being held together by gravity, kind of like moving like a blob of jello with octopus tentacles, you know? Kind of like your mom. Controlling the huddle feels so great because it is the exact opposite of how the boy feels to control. We are shown not only what it feels like to be bigger and stronger, but what it feels like to be the biggest and the strongest. Now, the controls are great, I think I've made that clear, but what about the achievements? Well, that's funny that you ask. There's really not many difficult achievements to mention, and by not many, I mean like none. I mean, you know, there are the orbs, which I referred to them as MBTs earlier, but they're called orbs. And I guess they're tough. Really, I guess you could say that they are the most difficult puzzle in the game, but I don't think that they're really that crazy. Yeah, I mean, besides that's kind of it. Honestly, I just think that this game is a really fun and rewarding time. I genuinely think that this game is beautiful. Just like your mom, you should give her a call she probably misses you. That's what I was trying to say earlier. That this game shows us things that may be jarring to see, but it shows us them with a smile on our face. It's dark, but in an intriguing way. This game, like all other games, is a collection of code and animation with storytelling and sound mixed in for good measure. But the world that's created from those ingredients, the memories that are created, are much bigger than that. The reason I'm getting a little sappy here at the end is because I can't not talk about what happened to Playdead in 2015. From the little research that I did, all I can really understand about it is that Dino Patti and Arndt Jensen had a creative falling out that ended in Arndt buying out Dino in the company, pretty much meaning that he paid him in a forceful way to leave. I know that this news is like 10 years old by now, and it's not exactly new or surprising, and Dino Patti has used his smarts and spectacular facial structure to help out on many, many games since then, and Playdead, as of recording this video, hasn't released a game since Inside. And I'm not taking sides on this, by the way, I promise. I don't like it when indie daddies fight, but I just wanted to mention this because I wanted to thank these two guys. Really, game creation is tough, man. And these dudes created two monstrous classics, and that's not an easy thing to do. And it's especially not at the scale at which they did it. I also wanted to say this here because now we are exiting the Inside part of this essay. We'll be picking up Inside a little bit later on, but first we got a bone to pick. A bloody, neon, giant, sci-fi epic anime bone to pick. And if you want to talk about greatness, then look no further. AKIRA needs no introduction. But I'm gonna give it one anyway. On Saturday, July 16th, 1988, Toho Kabugushi Gaisha released the bloody dystopian cyberpunk rock biker gang sci-fi neon-infused angry experimental animated masterwork of modern cinema, AKIRA, to Japanese audiences. The movie would later be released in America on Monday, December 25th, 1989, and then remastered and re-released again in America with a new voice cast and updated visuals on Friday, March 30th, 2001. On Saturday, July 16th, 1988, I wasn't alive. And I also wasn't alive in 1989, and I was in diapers in 2001. So I can't really do that thing I usually do by equating what I was doing at the time to when the piece of media I am discussing was realized, so I think we're all just gonna have to deal. Directed by the man who also wrote and drew the manga the movie was based on, Katsuhiro Otomo. The movie grew to not only be a smash hit with audiences around the world, but also managed to capture the culture in a way that had never been done before and open the world's door to Japanese animation. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm talking about AKIRA. AKIRA is one of those things that anyone who knows remotely anything about anime has either seen or at the very least heard of. AKIRA is one of those things that has bonded the Western society to Japanese culture with its concoction of strangeness and violence because AKIRA is an experience. The weight of AKIRA is so grand because it's AKIRA, man. Like, it's AKIRA. What am I going to say that hasn't already been said or thunk or spit or spat or tat about AKIRA? Like, I'm sure everyone who has heard the lore by now, but if you're even a passing AKIRA fan, I'm sure that you know that the movie was created basically in the middle of Otomo-san still writing and drawing the manga. I'm sure that you know that they had to invent 50 new colors for the AKIRA movie. Who's they? I don't know. How do you invent colors? I don't know. I'm sure that you know that they spent over $10 million to remaster it, which is like double what they spent to just make the movie. You don't do that for just any movie. Well, then you may be asking yourself, what am I going to talk about when talking about Akira? I'm going to talk about my story with Akira. But before we talk about that, let's first talk about my history with anime. My history with anime is funny. I remember when I was around 5 or 6 years old discovering Naruto on Cartoon Network, and as soon as my little brain was introduced to it, I knew that it was different. I knew that this style of animation wasn't the same as the cartoons that I was used to. It was different. Surmising that my parents wouldn't let me watch it because of how crude and violent it was, I decided that I would take the deceptive approach because I needed to keep watching it. So, the plan I came up with in my 5 to 6 year old brain was that I would only watch it whenever I visited my 80-year-old grandmother in her retirement home, and my grandmother, probably through the kindness of her heart and I'd like to think some strange curiosity, watched Naruto with me in secret. Like, okay, I just want you to picture this. I just want you to picture a very loud and very talkative child discussing the intricacies of Naruto and Sasuke's fighting styles with his 80-year-old grandmother as she crocheted and also gave her in-depth opinions on the topic. My grandmother was an OG, dude. From Naruto, I had discovered Inuyasha on Adult Swim's Toonami, and from there I began to spend most of my pre-adolescence diving into the ocean that is anime. And, well, the rest is also funny. Long-running viewers of this channel won't be surprised to hear this, but I first heard of Akira from, you guessed it, WatchMojo.com. Thank you, Old Faithful. I had probably been no more than 13 years old, walking through life with a lot of ideas, no doubt influenced by the fact that the 5 pounds of hair gel was weighing on my head like a faux hawk-shaped bowling ball. Heavy is the head that wears the faux hawk. I would sit down wearing my neon green skinny jeans to watch my third Watch Mojo video of the day, and one sunny afternoon, perhaps like any other, I had stumbled upon the familiar voice of Watch Mojo's Rebecca talking about the top 10 anime films of all time, some of which I had heard of, some of which I had not. And then, as the numbers counted down, we finally got to number 1, Akira. I watched this watchable mojo in awe. All of the adolescent brain chemicals that I could muster were thinking, this looks wild. This looks like everything I am right now. This looks angry and violent and neon. And as my little adolescent brain fluid watched through this movie with my jaw on the floor, it gave me a feeling of connection. Like what you just experienced was talking to you. Not an audience, not a country, not a culture, to you. This feeling of mind compensation, like what I had watched was not only on my mind, but in my mind. Like the movie and me are now one. Perhaps I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but this is like literally genuinely how I felt watching Akira for the first time. I've probably watched Akira once every 2 or 3 years from that point, and every time I see it, it seems to be a different movie. The first time I watched it, it was a sci-fi action movie. The second time it was a romantic comedy. Then it was a body horror movie, and then it was an artsy, plot-bending indie. The movie would stay the same, but the things I noticed about it would change. Like, me and the movie were growing up together. But for right now, Akira is a monolith that we can stand at and look at in awe. This movie is so much to so many people, and I think that that's what makes it so beautiful. So let's explore, let's watch, let's dive into Akira. Light, then darkness. Akira is a story about things that split and things that stay together. Akira is a story about devastation in the wake of devastation. Akira is a story about a lot. Katsuhiro Otomo seems like a humble guy. I don't think he set out to create arguably the most influential piece of Japanese animation probably ever. Honestly, I think that he just wanted to adapt his manga into a movie, and I think he thought that it would be fun. Put a pin in that, by the way. But Akira has grabbed the world and held onto it for the better part of 30 years because this movie is a deep dish pizza that is 30 years tall. Also, I'm sorry for anyone watching this whose name happens to be Akira, because I'm gonna say some weird things like that, and I just want you to know that I don't mean it as an insult, and I think that you are much more than a 30-year-tall deep dish pizza. But on the off chance that you're watching this and your name isn't Akira, or it is Akira, and you haven't seen this movie, then you must really, really like this video, because you are very far into it without having seen this movie. Good on you. I'm genuinely impressed. The only thing I can say at this point is go watch it. Please. It's awesome. And it's cool. And it's anime. And I like it. I've also debated whether or not I should put this next section that I'm about to start going on in this video. And obviously, I chose to keep it in because I'm going to talk about it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a quick refresher on the movie Akira. Here's a quick rundown. And because I've seen this movie so many times, I'm actually going to try and recite this entire movie exclusively from memory, like without checking or watching the movie. Mostly because I'm curious to see how I'll do, and I also want to make this a little bit more interesting. So, Akira. All right, okay, so we open on, like, normal-looking 1989 Tokyo, and then everything's fine until, boom, flash, oh no, no sound. We cut to 30 years in the future of 2019. Tokyo has become Neo-Tokyo, and the world, or I guess Japan rather, is recovering from World War III. And there's like a lot of riots and political discourse, but more importantly, there's teenage biker gangs, and they be hooliganing and causing trouble and doing a bunch of tomfoolery. Really, there's only two biker boys that you gotta worry about. The first is Kaneda. He's the leader of this gang, and he's the one with the red jacket, and he's the one that's on all the promotional material. And then there's Tetsuo. He's the smaller one with the big forehead. So, whilst Kaneda and Tetsuo fight a rival biker gang, we also see an injured man escorting what I can only describe as an elderly child through the tumultuous streets of Neo-Tokyo. Anyway, this man gets ganked, and the child teleports right into the middle of our boys' biker fight, causing Tetsuo to crash. And shortly thereafter, the military shows up and takes injured Tetsuo and the young old man. For future reference, this young old man's name is Takashi. This one's name is Masaru, and we're going to meet Kyoko later. So I'm just going to refer to them as their names going forward, just so I don't have to keep calling them the elderly children. While Tetsuo is at the government hospital, they discover that he has latent psychic abilities, and his readings are very similar to someone else's named Akira. Tetsuo then escapes from the hospital, but is definitely more psychotic and violent than before. He gets recaptured, and then the kids start using their powers of tomfoolery to pick on Tetsuo, causing Tetsuo to go into a telekinetic sci-fi rampage. Meanwhile, Kei, a resistance fighter introduced earlier, and Kaneda break into the hospital to both spy on the government and also free Tetsuo, but Tetsuo goes a little crazy, demanding to meet Akira, but Akira is being held in like an underground freezer. Things go wrong, Kei and Kaneda get captured, Tetsuo escapes, and the rebellion officially starts. Kei then gets possessed by Kyoko and helps Kaneda escape. Tetsuo then starts destroying the entire military in order to free Akira. Things go very terribly wrong for the government and very decent for Tetsuo because he unearths Akira only to discover that Akira is jars. Possessed Kei and non-possessed Kaneda show up. They get into a fight where they remind each other of each other's names about 100 times. Kaneda! Until the government launches a space laser they had lying around, and it takes off Tetsuo's arm. Tetsuo KOs the space laser and then creates a brand new arm with just a bunch of metal bits and bobs flying around. He then flees with Akira's remains to the new Olympic Stadium, and there his girlfriend, named Kiori, whom we met earlier, joins him, but Tetsuo is losing his grip on his powers, and his arm is getting all, like, crazy, gross, mutated. And then the General shows up. The General's a character who we've also been following throughout this entire movie, and starts taunting Iron Boy over here. That's a Japanese vocabulary joke for you. Kaneda shows up and loses quite quickly, and then Tetsuo explodes into a goo baby. I've heard arguments that what Tetsuo turns into doesn't look like a baby, and those arguments are wrong. That's a goo baby, ladies and gentlemen. Laser fight me in the comments. All hope is lost until the three elder children show up and sacrifice themselves by using their powers to create a new universe, I think, with Tetsuo and Akira trapped inside, which also destroys Neo Tokyo. Okay. Full disclosure, I've never really got this ending before. Like, I get it. I don't know. It just always felt really hard to explain. Like, it's easier to watch to explain. Hold on. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The Espers revive Akira to stop the growing mass. Reuniting with his friends, Akira creates a singularity, drawing Tetsuo and Kaneda into another dimension. The Espers teleport Shikishima to a safe distance as the singularity destroys Neo Tokyo in a mirror of Tokyo's previous destruction. At an unspecified plane of reality, Tetsuo introduces himself and triggers the creation of a universe, finally transcending the limitations of human experience. Of course, obviously, how could I not get that? That's so clearly that's what happens. Duh. Either way, the remaining members of our team ride off into the sunset, or sunrise, I'm not exactly sure what time of day it is, but hope is finally in front of them. The end. Alright, so as always, let's start with my gripes with the world-renowned, globally loved golden key that introduced all of us to the world that is Japanese animation and storytelling, Akira. I think the pacing is weird. And understandably so. The movie is a 2-hour adaptation of a 2,000-page story. Of course they are going to make some cuts. Otomo even talks about this in the behind the scenes for the movie. He says that he wanted to think of the movie more like a singular chapter rather than a full story. And even in that regard, the play-by-play of actions happens at a very strange pace. Like, for example, on my most recent watch through of the movie, I didn't realize that the scene in which Tetsuo fights the children happens almost halfway through the movie. Really, the ending fight takes up more than a third of the runtime. And speaking of, there are moments and characters that I really try to find a need or a reason for belonging in this movie. Like, this guy? Listen, this guy's a huge part of the comics, but he is vastly unneeded in the movie. The scene that he's in is very interesting and well animated, but like, why is he here, you know? Also, I know this has been said and resaid about this movie, but the characters look very similar, especially Kei and Kaneda. And near the end, when Kai, you remember Kai, right? When all three of them are on screen, they legitimately look like the same person in different clothes. Now, the funny thing about that gripe is that it perfectly transitions into what I love about Akira, because the animators probably made all of them look really similar so that they could focus more on the animation. Dude, Akira is the gold standard for animation across the board. Like, no comparison, no competition, hands down, this movie moves like a buttery smooth goo monster destroying the Olympic Tokyo Dome. Like, you can pick any of the explosions or breaks of material or piece of technology and you can focus in on them and see all of their different parts and see how they move and see what makes them up and how the different pieces of them fall. It is bone-chilling to imagine how many man-hours went into making this building falling look like the way it does. Otomo-san drew over 700 pages of storyboards himself. Like, he drew 700 pages of storyboards before the animation of this movie started to help the animators work more smoothly. He did this while still working on the manga and helping with the animation himself and directing the voice actors and going through all other parts of production. This man is a machine. He is a detailed, oriented machine. Like all of the machines, he clearly loves drawing and animating. And all of this painstaking animation only serves to add to the world. Akira's world is dark. Literally and figuratively, but let's focus on the literal. Because most of this movie takes place at night and in dark spaces, the animators and color coordinators, I don't I don't know if that's official title, I just wanted to say the rhyme to be fun, had to work extensively hard to make this movie look like this. Akira is dripping, oozing, palpating, and bleeding with life and depth and color and vibrancy. It's insane to try to think and compare this to anything else that has been made, especially around the time. Like, don't get me wrong, there were gorgeously animated movies being made in Japan at the time Akira was being made, but none of them look like this. When you look at the way these artists toil over the tiniest of impossibilities in the world to make them feel like this, it's wild. The world of Akira is complex and moody, and in this way, we meet and see all the parts of it. The best and the worst, the dirtiest and the cleanest. Everything is shown to us in such a beautiful and complicated way. It's just a profound and intricate way to tell a story. I'm trying really hard to not do that thing I do where I use too many synonymous adjectives when describing things, but it's just so hard when talking about this movie, because this movie is such movie, dude. Like, Akira is so much movie. And I think that all that Akira is even more than itself. Because when you add it all up, Akira is really a story about Japan. It's a story about destruction and rebuilding. It's a story about life and pain, but ultimately it's a story about hope. Akira exploded upon impact, and it caused a shockwave so forceful and so powerful that it gave the world anime. It revolutionized culture. I mean, like, look at anime, dude. Anime is huge, and it can all really be traced back to Akira. I mean, Akira's fingerprints can be seen everywhere, in all pieces of media. I mean, let's just get the obvious ones out of the way first. Just off the top of my head, Kaneda's bike shows up in Ready Player One and Cyberpunk 2077. There are two movies, Tetsuo the Iron Man and Tetsuo the Iron Man 2, which are directly inspired and even named after, and also way more gross than Akira. Kanye West's whole music video for Stronger is a shot-for-shot remake of scenes from Akira. Lupe Fiasco has an album called Tetsuo and Youth, and there's a giant teddy bear that looks eerily similar in the first episode of Code Lyoko. Remember Code Lyoko? Kaneda makes an appearance in Teen Titans. Remember Teen Titans? Jaden Smith's anime. Oh my god, I completely forgot that Jaden Smith made an anime. Jaden Smith's anime is called Neo Yokio, and I genuinely didn't know this, but in the course of making this video, it has been brought to my attention that there's also a track in Mario Kart 7 called Neo Bowser City, which sounds so not real, but, like, there it is. Spoiler alert for Demon Slayer incoming, but there's a giant cinematic baby monster fight in that. Just for the benefit of the doubt, I'm not gonna count every anime boy in a red leather jacket, but they're notable. I'm also not gonna count all the psychic children in TV and movies and everything else since Akira's release, but they are notable, and I'm also not gonna mention all the anime that have gruesome sci-fi battles in hallways, but they are notable. Listen, this may be the most controversial thing I'll say on this channel, but all I'm gonna say is that Dragon Ball Z got a lot more sci-fi-esque and power-up-y and screaming to fighty-y after Akira was released. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm not a saying. I'm just a saying. And audience, please let us not forget about the Akira slide. Even though that sounds like a dance in which you have to telepathically fuse to a neon motorcycle, if you are not in the know, then let me open No's door and let you in. These 50 frames over the course of 2 seconds have influenced countless animators and directors for almost 40 years. Why? I don't know. Maybe because it's rad? I'm not going to name all the times that it happens because I don't think that I can. But I will say that my favorite is when Jordan Peele did it in live action for Nope. The Akira slide is just one of those things that, like, you can't unsee once you've seen it. But with all of that said, Akira is grotesque. and beautiful. Akira is confusing and soothing. Akira is angry. Akira is content. Akira is a lot, but so am I. And so are we. I think that Katsuhiro Otomo gave something to the world that we can never repay. He gave us a mirror of who we were and who we are, who we want to be and who we will become. He gave us a bloody, meaty chunk of his still beating heart, and it has been flowing joy and energy through the artistic world ever since. Arigatou gozaimasu, Otomo-san. Thank you so very, very much. Signed me, signed everybody. Now, let's get back to Inside. Holy crap, remember Inside, the game that I'm supposed to be saying goodbye to? Well, buckaroos, you better strap up and strap in because we got a whole another section to get through before we even think about saying goodbye. The themes! Yay, the themes! I can feel your excitement through my TV dome and through your computer screen. Now, the theme section for this video is going to be a little bit different. Like all the theme sections are a little bit different. This is how it's going to go. I'm going to talk about not only the themes that connect inside Akira, but also how those themes sort of interlock these two pieces of media into a big, gooey, but beautiful Danish-Japanese dance. Also, I just want to say that I couldn't find anywhere on the internet where the creators of Inside said that Akira inspired them, but, like, I don't know. Like, listen, I made the connection pretty easily, and I don't think that it's that big or strong of a connection to make. Like Boys in Red, oppressive cityscapes, scary sci-fi laboratories, atomic blasts, telekinetic powers, goo babies. I mean, Danny Sexbang made the connection.
Oh, what am I, f***ing Akira now?
And you may be asking yourself, was this whole video really just me expanding on one 7-word sentence said by a Game Grump 8 years ago? Maybe. Maybe. But I think that the connection is apt. And I'll go so far as to say that I think that the connection is even more apt after you listen to this section. So let me explain why. So the three themes that I could find that fits both of these grotesque roller coasters together are control, oppression, and monsters. Now hear me, world, as I conduct my train of thought. I alluded to it at the end of the Akira manga portion of this video, but these stories, for me, paint a picture of rebellion and destroying what was taken from you. In other words, if I can't have it, no one can. Control. No, I do not mean Remedy's 2009 sci-fi telekinetic shooter, but maybe I should. I mean the idea of trying to manipulate and deceive in order to feel powerful. In Inside, we control a variety of things. Not just ourselves, but the drones, the sub, the huddle, the narrative. Everything in Inside is either being controlled by us or we are controlling it. And the people who are running this facility are obviously pining for control. They want, or already have, or want to keep control of this city, or at the very least, this system. They observe and write down everything that happens, and the drones seem to be discarded and forgotten when they're no longer useful. And the drones are people who seem to be asleep or comatose, and they are being controlled on a mass scale by people running this facility. And it also seems like they're being sold, as shown in the scene where we find ourselves on the receiving end of a test of the drone's ability. This scene perfectly shows us that control is running rampant through this world. This scene heavily implies that the drones are being sold to rich families, or at least better off families, as slaves. I can also see almost a dark sense of humor to the whole idea. Like, are these really slaves if they're just asleep or in comas? Like, can they really suffer if they don't know what's going on? And I think that it's that same satirical logic people use to try and justify killing someone, hypothetically. It's like, no matter what angle you spin it, it still kind of feels sour, no? Like, this scene has us, the player, control a character that is mimicking the control of the drones who are being controlled by an unseen force. Like, we are pretending to be a puppet to trick the puppeteer. And then we can even go further with this thought when we think about the fact that in the secret ending, we see a controller helmet that seems to be controlling us. And when we shut it off, the whole thing ends. Like we took over control and used it to end the oppression, end the pain, or maybe just end us. In Akira, control is hopeless on all ends. The government wants to control over people that refuse to listen, and the people want to control over a government that refuses to let up. Tetsuo can't keep control over his powers, and the stronger he gets, the more control he loses. Kaneda wants to control his life as an adolescent by acting out and giving into trouble, but hilariously, he finds himself helping more than he's hurt. Arguable point, I know, but nonetheless. I mean, I can go a little bit further into this point too, so I will. The scientists want to control Akira's power, and it resulted in a mass explosion the size of an atomic bomb. The Espers wanted to control Tetsuo by scaring him, and it only made him more angry. Tetsuo wanted to be in control and rescue and free Akira, only to find out that Akira is just a bunch of body parts in test tubes. Am I making my point clear? Control in Akira is a hopeless venture. It's like the world that Otomo-san created can't help but tear itself apart because all parts are pulling against each other. And then, when they break and the world is destroyed, only at that moment do we see light shining through the clouds. Like, as soon as control is unattainable, do we see hope. Control, in general, is a funny thing to talk about, because I think in a way it's something that every single person will strive for, consciously or subconsciously. Because it's something that we can never really fully get, because we never really know every outcome. The world is full of random and chaotic messes that no one can possibly see coming. And we like to look behind us at the life that has happened, and we see the story that we tell ourselves, and it all makes sense. But I don't think it really does. I think that when we tell ourselves the story of our lives, it only gives us the same comfort that everyone in Akira and in Inside got. And that really isn't worth a lot. Oppression. When you can't control, you oppress. Oppression in Inside and oppression in Akira is much more felt than stated, especially in Inside because, well, there's no dialogue in Inside. I think that the scientists scream and gasp and whatnot, but I don't think that counts as them saying anything. Regardless, Inside is bookended with escape. We start the game trying to escape from these men who presumably want to make us a drone, and then we become the huddle and we want to escape the facility that we broke into. In both instances, we more or less accomplish our goal, but it doesn't really get us any closer to anything resembling what we can call better. It's definitely not a coincidence that we are a child in Inside. And I think that it's not a coincidence because everything around us is bigger than us. Everything can and will hurt or kill us. We have to go low and get dirty to get where we want to go. We have to crawl and dig and scratch and hope to get to the end of this game. Well, to get through 90% of this game. In Inside, it's like we're stuck. We have the boot of this corporation constantly squishing us.
Imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
And we know that if we wiggle away, they won't be far behind. So we go into the boot to try and destroy the leg. But it's impossible because we're too small. For right now. that is. Inside is constantly showing us that the world that we are in is a dystopian, Kafka-esque, Orwellian fever dream that Karl Marx's ghost is going to war to get over. I mentioned this a second ago, but the workers of this world are slaves to the highest degree. Not only do they not get paid for their work, I'm assuming here because I couldn't find any pay stubs in the offices, but they aren't even aware that they're working. And that is like the tippy top of oppressive belief, my friends. The comedy of the situation is that the rich don't even seem to be thriving in this world. They seem as miserable and low as everybody else. Like the world that we are inhabiting isn't even a bright one for anybody. And Akira, on the other hand, holds the same cards with a different coat of paint. In Akira, the world is torn apart and bleak, but the economy, or rather the aesthetic of the economy, seem to be overcompensating with a growth in wealth and showmanship. Like every building in Neo-Tokyo is impossibly huge, and the lights are impossibly bright. And from a distance, the city looks like a utopia, but once you enter it, that is far from the case. This world is a capital M mess. The systems that teach the youth look like this. The meetings that hold society together look like this. The people of this world have a one-up on the people of inside because at least they're trying to fight. They're trying to overthrow this government to get something better, but the government is just fighting them to keep everything in line. To the manga's credit, it takes us a step further than the movie because there it shows us that even the rebellion has a complicated and messy hierarchy. Like, these systems are just mirrors of one another. Like, no matter what side you're on, you're going to be under someone else's thumb. And that person also happens to be under someone else's thumb. And I think that at the first taste of power, Tetsuo wanted to stop it, to stop all of it, to stop the system that destroyed him and to stop the world that he lived in, and he wanted to create this idea of Akira, the idea of a being that will save him. And in the manga, the oppression ends when the second cataclysm happens, and it plunges Neo-Tokyo head first into an apocalyptic wasteland. And it did its job. The oppression is over, but now all that Tokyo has to do is survive. Questions like, was it worth it? Or, am I happy? Are irrelevant when you're starving. Oppression in Akira is really boiled down to a joke. Everyone is oppressed. The people who are oppressing the people who are oppressed are oppressed. Irony tastes bitter when there's no one to enjoy it. Both of these mediums are about the pressure of oppression. The force that squeezes the little man down to a speck. But much like the atom splitting, when you put enough pressure on one thing, that thing explodes. Monsters. Let's talk about monsters. More specifically, let's talk about what someone means when they call someone a quote-unquote monster. A monster isn't human. A monster is someone who does things to one or others that are ethically deplorable. I've never liked this idea, because in my experience, hurting people and trying to justify it is one of the most human things imaginable. We want so badly to distance ourselves from our own judgment that we can make anything sound justifiable. Experiments, murder, slavery. If we find ourselves on the judgmental end of anything, we're just gonna try and justify it. I'm speaking in broad terms here, but stick with me. Let's all go all the way back to Limbo. And let's talk about the abyss and what happens when we look into ourselves and how we find darkness and how that darkness looks back at us. And let's finally come full circle and bring it to the first part of that quote. Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. In Inside, we see the horrors of this facility firsthand, and we even become a victim to it if we die. But eventually, we get the chance to fight back. We become something as scary as this facility, and we rampage through the building like it's made of butter. We terrorize this place, and it almost bests us until we escape. But even in our escape, we don't see freedom. We make it just short of the water, and presumably we die on this beach. In Akira, Tetsuo is constantly told that he is lesser than. He is the weak link, the outcast, and then he gets a taste of power, and he wants to burn the world to the ground. He starts pushing himself to the brink of himself until his power overwhelms him. He becomes a conglomerate of hate and rage, anger and pent-up frustration, and he becomes the thing that destroys not only his world, but everyone else's. I genuinely believe that the general was trying to help Tetsuo, just like Kaneda was trying to help Tetsuo. I think the Espers, in their strange way, were trying to contain him in an effort to help him, but I also think that they knew what was going to happen to him early on. Tetsuo becomes a monster trying to fight this imaginary adversary. He takes on the world to prove that he's strong, and he is then consumed by his own strength. Philosophically, ethically, I don't agree with revenge. And by that, I mean that I don't agree with the idea of getting back at someone or something for something that they have done. When I was a little kid, I had the hardest set idea of fairness you can imagine. Fairness is in quotes, by the way. Whenever I felt wronged, I would make sure that I did the same thing to the person who wronged me, or worse. For example, one time... Sorry, this story is really dumb. For example, one time, my brother took me to a bowling alley because he was going on a date with his then girlfriend, and he was probably 17, meaning that I was probably 6, and his girlfriend had brought her little brother, who was the same age as me, and she brought him bowling because they thought it'd be a little fun play date while they went on a date. Now, I don't remember the inciting incident, but my brother tells me that I got a gutter ball and his girlfriend's brother laughed at me. And this laughter hurt me so much that I decided to put a lot of salt in his soda while he wasn't looking. However, my brother caught me and brought me home immediately as a punishment, and that part I do remember. Now, while that story is a little bit funny and a little bit embarrassing, I was a child, and I tell you it to illustrate that to me, revenge is childish, no matter the context, no matter the predicament. To me, of course. I know that opinion is not shared by many people, and I am also comparing a massive statistical class oppression and control to a small bowling confrontation between two literal children. But battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. There's a topic that is very important and a very heavy part of this theme when talking about Akira, and somewhat when in talking about Inside, but mostly Akira. And I alluded to it earlier, but honestly, I've been avoiding talking about this until now because I feel very strange talking about a major world-shattering event on my YouTube channel in which I talk through a cartoon character whose TV is a head. But here it goes. On August 6th, 1945, Colonel Paul W. Tibbets Jr. entered into a Boeing B-29. The only payload of this airplane was a device that was designed to split the nucleus of an atom within a cluster of uranium, thus creating a small sustaining chain reaction of energy. This flight would hopefully end a war. This flight would change the lives of the world. This flight killed 80,000 people, some of whom died instantly, some of whom weren't so lucky. The same thing happened again 3 days later. The fact that haunts me the most about this moment in history isn't the death toll, even though that it is heartbreaking. The fact that haunts me the most about this moment in history isn't that Colonel Paul W. Tibbets stated that he would do it again given the circumstances. The fact that haunts me the most about this moment in history is that the plane that carried this device was named after Colonel Paul Tibbetts' mother. The fact that an act so painful and terrifying and destructive, there's still a haunting reminder of humanity. In the quest for fairness, or for justice wronged, or for closure, or whatever you want to call it, one will usually have to sacrifice humility and humanity. I'm speaking from experience. No matter how justified you feel, hurting people won't ever get you what you want. It'll just give you a quick, sweet feeling of happiness, followed by an abyss of bitter loneliness. Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. Inside and Akira are works of fiction. Great works of fiction, if you ask me. And to me, they both illustrate that when we try to destroy something, we end up destroying ourselves. We become the monster that we fight. We take on that anger and that pain, and we consume ourselves in what we believe is fair. Fair is in quotes, by the way. In the quest for justice, we dissolve our empathy. We deem people monsters. We distance ourselves from them until we can't even see what we're fighting, and then we end up trying to destroy an idea we created. To fight is to expend energy, and that energy could be used to build, potentially. I'm speaking from experience. Now, am I saying not to fight? Am I saying that fighting isn't worth our time? Double down, hands on the table, N-O. Definitely not. Fight, rage, bleed, and grow. But know what you are fighting. Take care of the monster you are before becoming a new one. Forgive the things that people who hurt you have done, and forgive the things that you've done to others. That is the fight. I'm not telling you what to do, or at least I'm not trying to. I'm just saying something that I wish that I knew a long time ago. I wish that I knew that none of us are innocent because we all have made choices. And maybe intentionally and maybe unintentionally, those choices have affected people. But regardless of intention, we have to understand that if we want anything, we are going to have to choose to fight. And that choice will take energy, and it will take innocence. Energy is currency. So why not use the energy you have on something that's worth your time? But even if you don't, everything has a cost. Man, okay, I really try very hard not to, preach in these videos. Hold on. Let me step down for a second. I try really hard. Full disclosure, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you feel like. Listen, we're all adults here, I assume, and we can all make rational, logical decisions. I'm a guy with a TV for a head speaking on the internet, so take that for all it's worth. And I appreciate you sticking around long enough to hear me get up on that soapbox that I just leapt down from. But let me get back on for a second just so I can make one more point. I think that my favorite part of both Inside and Akira are the endings. And I think that they're my favorite part because they feel exactly the same. After all the destruction, after all the pain, there's a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. After all the blood, after all the rage, and after all the fear, there's still hope. To me, this means that no matter how far you go onto a monstrous path, you can always rebuild. What was destroyed can never be returned, but that doesn't mean that something new can't take its place. To me, Inside and Akira are stories that tell me that I can always start anew. I may not be able to go back, but in going forward, I can change. I just have to face the rubble and pick up the pieces and give myself a little hope. I think that it's time we say goodbye. Dear Inside. Oh man, I'm gonna miss you. You're a meaty one, Mr. Grinch. You're a dark, desolate, crunchy, indie delight of a time, and I will miss you like I'll miss an old friend. Inside, you are a grand old puzzle-tastic, side-scrolling, unforgettable ride of a time, and I thank you for everything you've given me. Inside, I love that you know what you are. I think that in all the treasures that you hold, they give me more than what they cost. And I'm happy that, as far as I know, you're the only game in which I get to belly flop pancake onto a corporate CEO, and an extra special thank you for that. Inside, I want to thank you for letting me play an underdog who goes through both a literal and figurative sea of trouble before coming out the other side more powerful than I started. I want to thank you for being so frickin' metal and so frickin' angry and so frickin' thrilling. Inside, you share a room in my head with a very beloved and very famous and also very Japanese piece of media, and I think that both of you fill that room very well. I think that despite being much less colloquially popular, you are still as thrilling as your anime counterpart, and I'll go to bat for that opinion any day of the week. Inside, thank you for all the hope. Thank you for all the sunshine. Thank you for the journey. I think that ultimately what you tell me is that that ray of hope will always be there. It's just that sometimes the clouds part and sometimes they don't. Maybe I'm being optimistic with that interpretation, but arrest me, I like looking up. Inside, I'm gonna miss you. I like showing you to people. I like showing you off because you're so unique and fun and gross, and I like the way you present yourself. Thank you, Inside. Thank you for the humanity. Thank you for the hope. Just a video boy. Boom! Inside complete! AKIRA complete! And look at that! It hasn't even been a whole year. I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy about that. I don't know how happy you are, but I'm pretty happy about that. And as always, I would like to thank my amazing patrons. Mazzy, extra huge thank you to you. Eve, Candied Bees, Dopey, Mara, Tails Bucko, Skull Shooter. Thank you. I tip my proverbial cap to all of you and thank you profusely. Right now on Patreon, I have an exclusive Patreon essay that kind of goes along with this video. It's about Katsuhiro Tomo's other work. Specifically, it's more about this really wild live-action horror comedy he made in the early 90s, and I'm pretty proud of it. I'd like to know what you think. You can go on over to Patreon and check that out. But in the future, I will be creating more exclusive essays that don't really fit on this channel. So if you want to hear more of my voice and opinions on things, you can go check those out. Also, if you want me to answer any questions here on the channel, then you can head on over to Patreon and do just that. Speaking of, what is the process of writing a script? How many drafts are made before you decide it's done? Do you start writing while you are already playing? And I'm sorry, my English is not my first language. Hope you understand what I'm trying to ask. Don't worry, I totally understand, and I promise that your English is better than mine. And also, this question is really funny to me because I've always thought that if I told anybody about my script writing process for this channel, then people will finally understand how that it is a miracle that any of these videos get finished. So, for the sake of time, I'll try and make this quick, but all my essays have a set template, meaning that every script will have an outro, story section, gameplay section, theme section, and then a goodbye letter, followed by an outro. And while I play these games, I take a lot of notes, and I try to gather my thoughts, but then after all the video is recorded and everything is ready, I kind of just start writing, and the longer I go on, the more I get into a rhythm, and then I kind of read it back and hope that it makes sense. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and I adjust accordingly until I have a finished script in front of me. I also don't start writing a video until I've fully completed a game because I want to get all my thoughts in order. I hope that answers your question adequately. Question: got any cool music recommendations? Oh boy. Well, usually I only recommend based on what I know the person asking likes, so I don't think that I can adequately answer this question. Sorry. Nah, I'm just kidding. I sort of listen to everything, so I'll just go over some of my favorite stuff that came out semi-recently. I'm not a huge country fan, but Zach Bryan's album, The Great American Bar Scene, blows my socks out of my neck. That album is amazing, and I may be made fun of for that, and that's okay. More Zach Bryan for me. Also, the funk pop glam band Lawrence released an album last year, and every single song on it is the actual theme to my life. So take that for what it is. The album is called Family Business, and I will recommend it till the cows come home, and I hope those cows are never coming home. I've also been listening to these artists recently, so you should check these peeps out if you wanna. You don't have to, if you wanna. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them over on Patreon. But I think that's everything. Am I forgetting something? Oh, right! This has been Inside and Akira, and I'll always be just a video boy. Thanks for watching.